We can't even tell you how cool we feel. Like,
right,
we
do.
We seriously,
really
we feel like we have fucking made it. This is it.
Well, thank you for, reading the book and for promoting it so much and getting the word out there.
Jamie's the one that you want her to promote it. I have like a tenth of the followers. It's wild.
Well, honestly, I came across it in the list that was like books you need to read in 2020. And I was like, oh, this looks great. And just put it on. But I, hadn't heard on the Bookstagram buzz or anything like that. And as soon as I read it, I was like, oh, everyone needs to read this.
Thank you. Yeah,
we're huge fans.
Wow, thank you.
All right. So the name of our podcast is Try Saying That Out Loud. And I'll actually give credit to Lo for that name. Lo, I'll let you explain what exactly it means.
There's no credit owed. It is from Schitt's Creek, if you haven't watched that show, which now is getting a ton of buzz. But it was literally something that came out of David's mouth, and I was like, that is it.
I love that show. Yeah.
The best show, right?
Yeah.
I cried actual tears of sorrow when I
still haven't finished the last season, but
okay,
I'm like saving it. Yeah.
No, save it, cherish it, because I didn't know there was going to be a season 6, and so Jamie had told me to watch it, and I watched up through season 5 and cried tears of true sorrow and pain. I was like, what am I supposed to do in quarantine if I don't have this show? And then season 6 came, and I just cried again at the end because of the same reason. So
it's so
good.
Though.
I'm excited to finish it, but it's so good. Yeah.
So good.
So the name of the podcast is Try Saying That Out Loud. And the way we've kind of interpreted that as our title is every episode we talk about our Try Saying That Out Loud moment of the month, where it's like, ooh, that doesn't sit well with us. A lot of it has been around racism and discrimination and just kind of what we've been dealing with in quarantine, where we realize the immense privilege we've been sitting with and things like that. So to hit it off at the beginning, do you have a Try Saying That Out Loud moment that has hit you particularly hard in quarantine?
I mean, it's a great question. I don't know. I mean, of course, I've been so impacted, as we all have, just kind of watching what's been happening from the pandemic to all of the protests and watching that and participating in those this summer. But I was thinking about just the pandemic and quarantine and how, I guess in the beginning, it just felt like time kind of slowed down and we were sort of all focused on things that mattered with relationships and friends and our lives, and that quiet sort of has shifted, at least for me, and I think for most of us now. We're just
everyone
so busy, just working.
Yeah.
But yet for most of us, or many of us, we're also not socializing. We're not seeing friends in the same way that we did before. So I think, like, I'm a quiet person. I can handle solitude. I think a lot of writers feel that way, but I am missing my friends deeply, just seeing them and being around them. And I think I'm also just missing like encounters with strangers, just like observing people, interacting with people, which is often like sparks for fiction. So just kind of being out in the world and that kind of spontaneity and travel that can bring. Missing all of that for sure.
I feel you. I'm really feeling the lack of just being able to just go places and spontaneity of trips, like a drive trip to go somewhere. That's not a thing.
I legitimately will go on a hike, but be like, but where am I going to pee? Like, this is a whole thing. Like, I can't go to the bathroom. Like, where am I going to go? And I don't want to go in a public restroom. But I feel you on I've always considered myself to be an introvert in a lot of ways. My recharging of my batteries happens when I'm by myself. So I actually, literally, I have a friend who created like a line of like apparel where she donated proceeds to like Meals on Wheels and things like that. And I made her create one that said thriving introvert, because I was like, this is great. I don't need to see people ever. I don't need to like have these, conversations, but I'm starting to feel, and I joke because Jamie and I created this podcast in April, Jay? And I was like, there's a reason we did that, because we're literally starving for human connection any way we can get it. And it's just so fascinating how those things kind of unfold. But I feel you on I'm suddenly like, okay, it would be nice to be able to hug someone. That would be really pleasant, wonderful.
I think we're all feeling tired, you know.
Yeah.
And
Well,
that's
now
just-
everyone expects this to be the new normal. So like that quiet that you were talking about doesn't exist anymore because it's like, well, we had to get back to some sort of normal life.
right. Yeah.
Yeah.
But then it's like the normal is just about work and it's not,
Yep.
it's still not about our
It's keeping ourselves
Yeah.
busy, right? Just it's like
Yeah.
a method of ignoring what's going on in the broader world. So fingers crossed for November.
Fingers crossed. I mean, that's the change we all need right now, right? It's like I'm feeling tired and also just enraged all the time. So
Well,
Yep.
and I'm feeling a
Toasty.
little bit energized lately because of just seeing like the lines of people voting
Yeah.
and just like setting that, like, what did they say? Someone on the news was saying that they think that more people are voting now. It's like comparable to like the 50s or like some wild
That's
time.
amazing.
So I was like, yay, at least
It's what we
people are
need.
getting out. Yeah, getting out to vote. So that's so important. Well, cool. So where are you in quarantine, by the way? Are you quarantining somewhere fun or just at home?
Just at home. I live in Lexington,
Okay.
Kentucky.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool. Oh, so you're not far. Well, I don't know. The South is like the same thing too.
She lives in California, so she
Okay.
doesn't really know.
I'm like North Carolina, where Jamie is, like not far, right? And then I stop myself.
I mean,
I'm
it's
like,
not, it's closer than you. I'm in Charlotte. But
Okay.
yeah, do you want to start the speed round? We're going to kind of throw
Yes,
some
okay.
softballs at you to get
Oh,
you warmed
God. Okay.
up.
get you warmed up.
Okay.
They'll be fun, hopefully fun.
Okay.
Okay. Favorite book of all time and favorite book in quarantine that you've read?
I mean, I don't know. I don't necessarily have like one favorite book of all time. I think that like Toni Morrison's Beloved is very high on my list. And then this book doesn't usually get as many cheers, but I'm a huge fan of Moby Dick. I think it's a really
Really?
yeah,
Okay.
incredible book. But for so long I didn't want to read it because like, why do I want to read about this, dude chasing a whale? But it actually is very funny, and it's just it's really smart about race and America at that time, and yeah, it's a pretty incredible book. But Beloved is, I think, one of the best American novels.
Yeah, I love Beloved so much.
Okay, so what about favorite TV? Oh yeah.
Oh, quarantine. Right now I'm still reading it, but I'm reading this book by Vanessa Veselka, The Great Offshores, which was longlisted for the National Book Award, and it's a really incredible big novel, which I like. Lots of different storylines and characters, and
Jamie is afraid of big books, and I like big books, and I cannot.
I was going to say, this sounds right up your alley.
I like wrote it down. I was like, yeah, okay, yeah, big book, great.
Okay, what about favorite TV show of all time, and then your favorite that you binged in quarantine?
Well, again, like I don't think I can say like one of all time, but we were just talking about Schitt's Creek, and that's like pretty great during quarantine. It's like I said, I'm kind of like I don't want to finish it all at once because it helps me, when I'm feeling just like too depressed, I can just watch that show, and it's
Yep. I'm on my third time rewatching it, so
I watched the little like Netflix documentary about after I watched season 6. It's like a 45-minute, and I was crying so much in the documentary because they show their last table read. I'm an emotional disaster apparently. And I was like, okay, so we're going to start it over, right? And my husband was like, yeah, we can start it over. And he's not a show rewatcher. So it was a big moment for us.
Yeah, good. And then I think, did you all watch I May Destroy You?
No.
Okay, so that show kind of destroyed me. But
What channel is it on? Or is it a Netflix show?
I think it's HBO.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
So that's next on our list.
I mean, definitely like not, it is actually funny. Parts of it are funny, but much,
Right, but it's like a little deeper.
Yeah, much darker and deeper, but really powerful.
Which I am normally, like, I don't watch the Schitt's Creek type of shows. So that's very much on my alley. Yes. I laughed, Jamie, when you asked channel. I was like, is channel even a relevant question?
I mean, like, if it's a show that's like current, it might still be airing on a channel like ABC.
Yeah, okay.
I'm just saying. Okay.
Okay. Coffee or tea?
Coffee.
What's your coffee order?
What's what?
What's your coffee order?
I just like to drink it right when I wake up. Of just like, standard kind of drip coffee with some cream in it, and
Mm-hmm.
that's it. I keep wanting to drink more tea. Like I feel like I should drink more tea, but I'm just not much of a tea drinker, you know?
I'm the
Yeah, don't
coffee
force
drinker
it.
and Lo is the tea drinker. So
Well, because
Lo
coffee
can't drink
makes,
coffee at all.
no, I shake. I like become,
Mm.
yeah, and I'm like, what can I do? And my old coworkers used to just be like, go cure cancer if you're like that insane. So it's not okay. I get not feeling well.
Okay. So tell us a little bit about you, your background, where you grew up, anything you'd like to share, just kind of about your life before becoming an author.
I grew up in a small town in Ohio, and yeah, I mean, I was a kid. When I was a kid, I read a lot. Loved going to the library every couple weeks and getting a big stack of books. And then I was just a big reader, and I was writing like little stories when I was a kid. But then I went on to college, and I started studying in English and then creative writing pretty early in my college life. And then yeah, I continued on to get an MFA in
Wow.
fiction. And I think I've been writing for most of my
I was going to say, it sounds
life.
like you sort of knew from the beginning.
I think so. I mean, I was a quiet kid, and I just read a lot and wrote
Yeah, I came
a
up
lot of
with
I love
stories.
stories.
that.
Do you have any of your stories from childhood? Like I'm
I
sure at
should
that point it was like pen to paper, right? Like I
yeah,
kind
yeah,
of did
yeah.
this a similar thing. Was very nerdy, but I would write stories, but I don't think any of them are saved because it was like handwriting. I don't think I
It was
had
loose leaf.
right.
Yeah. I think I do have a few. I need to like look through that stuff and see what I
It'd
wrote.
be
I
so
think that
fun to
like
see. Yeah.
I think early on they were just like stories about animals or something,
No, I
like
was writing
Same.
about horses. I was totally a horse girl, and like everyone
You
made
can
fun of
sell them
me.
for thousands of dollars.
right. Yeah, I should look for those. Maybe.
Well, so fiction was always your jive. What was like your favorite book when you in childhood when you were growing up that you read?
I mean, I think like I said, I definitely read a lot of like books about animals, but then and a lot of like Beverly Cleary books.
Mm-hmm.
And then The Outsiders was a big influence. I think I read
Oh,
that
such a
when,
good one.
Mm-hmm. That's a really
yeah,
good one.
like fifth or sixth grade or something.
So what prompted you or like inspired you to write The Prettiest Star? I think about like if I was an author, do I remember the moment of like this is when I decided, like, did something strike you? Did something happen? Like, what was it that caused this novel in particular?
I mean, I'd had a few different ideas I was kind of working on, but this one was the one that just sort of stuck. I wanted to write about a gay man who was HIV positive and returned to his small town in the 80s, like during the AIDS crisis of the 80s and 90s. And I think the spark was seeing this episode of Oprah when I was young, where it was about a gay man in West Virginia who'd gone swimming in his swimming pool in 1987. And he was HIV positive and got kicked out of the pool. And that story kind of lodged itself in my brain because when I watched the TV episode, she had gone to his town and it was like a town hall, so there were like maybe 200 members of his town in the audience, and it was really ugly and vitriolic. And the man was there on stage, and people said things like, AIDS is nature's way of eradicating gay men, and just really intense, awful, horrific things. And I think I didn't understand it at the time, but I think it just kind of lodged itself in my brain, like, because it was like long before I came out of the closet, but I think it just sort of stuck with me.
I mean,
And
how
so,
do you forget that?
yeah, so then I just started thinking about writing that story. That's where it started.
Well, and that was in the book, that scene.
Yeah,
And that
yeah.
was Jamie's, like, she was like, I cannot forget that. I mean, it's hard for anyone who reads that book. All of our friends who've read it are just very moved to tears in a lot of ways by that scene in particular in the book. So you did an incredible job with that.
Thank you.
Yeah. That's awesome. And
Um,
Oprah, my aunt used to watch Oprah all the time. So when you say
Yeah.
that, I was like, well, hey, Oprah was on all the time. I'm sure I caught snippets of that episode, but just don't recall it at all. So that's so funny.
Yeah, it was sort of like everyone was watching it in the 80s. It was on 5 days a week, I guess.
for sure.
She's a hard worker, that one.
So I have to ask, is David Bowie a personal favorite of yours, or was it more like I think that David Bowie's storyline fits this book well?
Yeah, I mean, I was a fan of David Bowie, not so much in high school. I kind of came to him later, but I was really just thinking about Brian as someone who's a little older, older than I am, and who would have grown up in the 70s, and thinking about like what music would he have been listening to. And David Bowie kept coming up for me, and I was thinking of someone who was so sort of wild and flamboyant and unapologetic, and was like a queer icon, and how that would have just felt so radical and inspiring for Brian.
It's perfect.
And then when I was working on the book is when in 2016 Bowie died, and so that, I think I like leaned into that even more, because I was listening to a lot of his music and just reading more about him and about his influence on people. So
Yeah, I loved that tie-in. I loved all the David Bowie references for sure.
thank you.
What was your, I guess it's hard for you to answer this question, I'm sure, but what was your favorite part? What was your, I guess maybe this is a better way to say it. What character story did you most enjoy telling in the novel? Because I think something that I particularly appreciated about it was that you kind of go in and you're introduced to Brian, and you think that the character journey is going to be around Brian. But I think what I walked away with is not, Brian obviously had his moments of growth and change, but it was everyone around him, I think, that was more impacted than you would anticipate. And so even like his sister and those types of people, ancillary to like the true crux of the story. So whose character did you enjoy telling the story of the most, I guess, for lack of a better way to ask that question?
I don't know. I mean, I loved writing all of their characters. I think probably the most complicated or difficult was probably writing Sharon's character and her point of view, to really do that with kind of empathy, but also not be too kind of forgiving of her and show all her mistakes and flaws. I think as far as like enjoyable, like really loving, it was actually probably Letty. Like I really loved writing her character, who's the grandmother.
Best.
Yes.
The best.
It's like I wanted her to be this force with her like dyed black
She
hair,
was.
her chain smoking, and like I wanted her to like, just be someone in the family who really defended Brian and who stood behind him and who didn't feel that kind of shame or embarrassment. So I wanted him to have somebody in the family he could really rely on.
Yeah. She definitely was an anchor. I was like cheering her on all the way. And
she was
we talked about when we read this book together, we had like an Instagram live about it. And we talked about kind of the unsung hero. And Letty's late husband, I was like, right on. I was like, he's the reason why, in my mind, why Letty was the way she was, or sorry, her brother, the way he was. And so I loved that whole backstory that kind of, I mean, maybe that was my imagination, but kind of unfolding and making that character come to life a little bit more.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, I think that connection of like her brother, who was, as she said, artistic, right?
Yeah.
Was that kind of connection for Brian.
Yeah. Super cool.
So who did you first let read the book when you thought it was done? For the first, you're like, all right, this is it. This is my first draft. I'm done.
And is that like a stressful, I would be so scared. I'd be like, okay, this person is a safe space. I'm going to make sure they read it. Because it's such a personal thing you're writing.
Right.
It's so hard.
I mean, I think I gave the first draft to my husband because he also is like a safe reader. Like I know he's gonna be truthful, but also very generous and gentle. So he read it, and then I gave it to my friend Megan Cruz, who's a writer, but at that point it had been a little bit more developed and polished. So I needed someone to kind of, tell me what was working and what wasn't working.
So was your first reader, or your husband, was it when it was done, or did he read at different portions of your writing process?
I mean, it wasn't like 100% done.
Yeah, okay.
Close, but but he shed a few tears, so that felt like a good.
I mean,
we both did.
I ugly cried for like way too long. Way too long. Going back to that poem at the end, I was like, okay.
I know Lo has the most burning question for you, though.
I have
Okay.
to. I
Okay.
have to know about the ending, and this is going to spoil
Yeah.
it for people that are listening to this. That
I
have
know.
not
So
Right.
read the book.
spoiler alert, if you haven't read it, skip
I
ahead
just
like a minute or
have
so.
to know. Maybe I'm toxic optimist where I just kind of saw it as this, obviously Brian's dad was someone we did not love throughout the novel at all. It was hard, like you said, to have empathy for his character, and we didn't hear from him very often. So when I approached the very end of the book, I kind of was like, oh, I wonder if we're going to hear from his dad. That would be an interesting way to end this in some capacity. But then the poem, and so some people have so many different interpretations of it, and I need to hear it from the horse's mouth what your intention for the ending was, if you will give it to us.
You mean the poem itself, or?
Yes. Well, yeah, like how you, yeah.
All of it.
All of it. Okay. Well, I don't want to like just say what I think, because I think it's good to have the reader's interpretations and experience and personal.
Fair.
But I'll say about Travis for sure. Like I wanted to have his perspective, but have it in that third person. There's a little bit more distance, because I wanted the reader to feel like his kind of silence in the book and how sort of damaging that is to Brian and to his whole family and to himself, and to feel like how inaccessible he is. But I also wanted to give him a moment, and I felt like I had that kind of image of him crossing the field and thinking about his son and regretting things, but it's sort of too late, right? At that point, that he realizes he should have shown up for his son and he didn't. And then in an earlier draft, I actually did end with that chapter. And then a couple of my readers were like, as my agent actually was like, I don't think we can end with Travis. Like he shouldn't get the last word, And I already had that chapter of just those kind of images and memories that Brian has right before that. So I just switched those chapters, which felt like so obvious, but sometimes when you're writing it, you can't quite.
You're too close to it.
No, that's so true. I mean, I'm really glad, because so in my view, it was Travis redeemed himself in some way, because I was like, okay, I saw it as he had regret, and that was kind of like, his moment of reckoning in some ways. But you're so right to not end with that, because it didn't give him time that he didn't deserve. You know what I mean? From the entire narrative of the story. So that's so cool. But no, I think, I don't know, Jamie, did we even talk about the ending? We never really talked about it,
I was just like hysterical, and then mass texted people and was like, you have to read this. That's pretty much how that went down.
Just so beautiful.
So speaking of that,
end it.
Are you writing your next book yet, or are you sort of riding the wave from this one right now?
Yeah, I mean, I'm working on a new novel. It's still really early on, so it feels kind of too difficult to talk about it right now. But
that's all we need to know, is that you're writing, because that's all at this point. Do you have a grocery list? Like, send it my way. I'll read it. I'm very down.
Okay. Yeah, I'm working on that. And then, I've published a few essays that you can find online and some short stories, but yeah.
We're very excited to read what comes next.
Yes, we're very excited.
And for a final question, just because we don't get to ask this of authors very often, obviously we are both on Bookstagram, and be honest, you can tell us you hate it. What are your thoughts on like the Bookstagram and
the
book
dark
world
web
of the internet?
Crazy readers.
Oh no, it's been great. I mean, I didn't know anything about it, getting until we started getting like responses from all of you, and it's been great. I love it because it's been a way to get my book out there to all these readers, like outside of just like the writing community, just to the readers. And it's been great because you all write reviews, which is fun. You get the book out there to other people, and y'all take great photos of my book. It's been fun to see my book in all these different locations with really
that is probably the best part, for sure. Like, we're always very, very verbose and probably a little bit annoying, but the pictures are great.
The pictures are great, but it makes me happy that, because we're always hearing that, books are sort of dying out there, people aren't reading, and I think it's just great to know that people are reading. And I think especially during quarantine, I think people have been even more kind of voraciously reading, and so
I think my book heart would beg to differ about that people aren't reading.
My husband would beg to differ. He's like, how much money have you been spending on books?
Right.
Well,
Yes, and enthusiasm's been great. And yeah, I'm sure it looks different for all of you who are in the Bookstagram world. I'm sure it's more complicated. But from
Well,
my
is
end,
there a
I love
right?
it.
It's a great word.
Yeah, yes, it's complicated to use a Facebook relationship status. No, there's a right. Okay, I'm going to say it wrong. Is it a writer's Ritstagram? Rightstagram?
Yeah,
Isn't
I
there
don't
a
know
right?
how that's
There's
Oh, is
something.
there? I don't know.
Oh, okay, well, that's good. Because
Yeah,
it's probably
not
good
I
for your
can't
mental
imagine
health.
trying to create in a world of other. I don't know. It'd be too much for a writer. I
Yeah,
cannot imagine.
yeah, yeah. I think that would be too much for me. But
Yeah. Ay, ay, ay.
Well, we don't want to take up too much more of your time, but thank you so much for
This was
coming
so
on
cool.
here.
Thank you.
yeah, this was
This
great.
was a
Thank
dream
you.
come true, and
Okay, good.
I'm gonna plug your book for
Oh,
you.
good. Thank you.
If you
Yes.
have it, if you haven't read it, Carter Sickels,
Behind
The
me.
Prettiest Star, my favorite
Yeah,
book of
it's very
2020.
well
I will keep
placed, by
saying
the way.
it.
Very well placed.
Thank you.
Oh yeah, I see it in the background back there. Well, thank you so much, Carter. Have a great
All right.
one.
Okay, you too.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.